Am I the asshole for snapping at my wife and calling her crazy because she wants me to take a paternity test for my nephew? Throwaway account for obvious reasons. My wife and I have been married for 10 years and together for 14. We are child-free. I also have a nephew who's currently 13, and I'm not going to lie, he looks a lot like me and has a lot of the same facial features as me. I am really proud of him, and we have a close bond. I have played a father-like role in his life since he was a kid. He has a deadbeat father, and my sister divorced him a long time ago. A couple of my family members have commented on how my nephew looks a lot like me, and while I initially thought it was wholesome, my wife, for some reason, became very insecure and started getting doubts. She was questioning why I needed to play such a prominent role in my nephew's life, why my nephew had autism, etc. The insinuations just became weird and made me uncomfortable.
Wow. Insinuating that the nephew has autism because it's a brother and sister. Is that what she's getting at?
I don't know, but wow, one could assume a lot of things.
Okay.
I do agree that my sister has played some part in my wife's insecurities because of her dry humor. During family gatherings, my sister jokes a lot about how wholesome it is that her son looks like me and that she couldn't be happier. It's obviously a joke, but I spoke to my sister and asked if she could tone it down a bit because it was making my wife a bit crazy. However, last night, my wife asked if I could take a paternity test just for her peace of mind. That's when I finally snapped and called her crazy, and that marrying her was the biggest mistake of my life. Whoa. I did immediately regret saying it because I meant none of it. My wife is the love of my life, but my wife got quiet and started crying shortly after, and I had to console her. Was I the asshole?
Oh my gosh. Oh, I want you to go first.
Well, we were doing really well, right? We were doing really well. I mean, it was all going great, fine and dandy. And I was going to say not the asshole until he popped off a bit.
Yeah.
And said, marrying you was the biggest mistake of my life.
Well, it honestly makes him sound guilty.
I mean, you can call her crazy. Is it nice? Maybe not. But is she acting a little unhinged? Yes.
Right.
So I understand that. But like to be like, you're so upset that she's asking for a paternity test, which I do understand. Offensive. She doesn't trust you. There's a lot of implications there.
Of course.
But you couldn't be like, babe, you are being so crazy. You're being unhinged. I wouldn't sleep with my sister. And so the reaction does kind of like, it's like, well, why are you getting so defensive? And so defensive to the point you said marrying me is the biggest regret of your life.
Right.
That's weird.
Right.
And also very hurtful.
Yeah.
You're kind of the asshole now for how you said that.
Right.
The gist of it is that I've agreed to take the test, but under certain conditions.
Oh, wow.
I understand my wife is being paranoid and delusional, but I want to take the test just to erase whatever irrational fears she has. Sometimes these fears have no logic, and I too have had irrational fears before, and there was no logic in them. Mm-hmm. I spoke to my sister about it today, and she was obviously pretty angry at my wife. However, my sister and I discussed it at length, and she agreed to the test under certain conditions. I spoke to my wife after and told her I would take the test under some conditions. My wife was very happy that I agreed to take the test, and then I told her those conditions. The first condition being that she had to stop these insinuations immediately. Mm-hmm. My wife immediately agreed to it. Mm-hmm. The second condition being that there were going to be no more arguments on me spending time with my sister and nephew. My wife and I have had some arguments over the years where she asked why I spend so much time at their house. My wife agreed to the condition, although she took some time to think about it. The third and final condition was that I had the liberty to go on vacations with my sister and nephew without my wife being there. I told my wife up front that my sister doesn't want her to come on these vacations anymore. My wife was a bit more hesitant on this, but she ultimately agreed to it.
Wait, why doesn't she want her to come anymore?
The wife or the sister's probably just so hurt.
Yeah.
Like, you're implying that I would sleep with my brother?
Right.
And you're so paranoid you're making us all do a paternity test?
I understand that, but just like to make that an agreement like for good,
It's interesting.
It is. It's like specifically vacations. Like you would think she'd be like, you're not allowed to see my nephew anymore. But like being like, you don't get to go to Florida with us.
Well, and then there's almost the question of like, maybe the wife's feelings aren't so out of the blue because maybe he has been stepping in like a surrogate partner.
Yeah.
Maybe she has had her needs neglected.
Mm-hmm.
It is a weird condition versus like, I don't want to be around her anymore.
Yeah.
And like, oh, hey, we're going to take you on our happy family vacations and she can't come.
Right.
It is interesting.